being a senior executive at a major transportation agency and again an instructor of junior executives who study public administration and our executive MPA program. Something I felt a gap between my passion for social equity, and I know many of my colleagues' passion for social equity, and the professional organizations I participate in, who profess uh, social equity all the time, a gap between what we do day to day and the public view. And it was a humbling experience because had to look back at my agency and say, how can we do better? And not only within our organization, but with the people we serve. And I'm glad we had leadership in our organization to take out time uh, to do a full agency review and an assessment of how we stand against the standards that should be in an organization who profess social equity and a belief in diversity and inclusion. And as a result of that self-evaluation, we came up with 25 groundbreaking reforms and new programs. I share that with you because this conference in and of itself, what NAPA does and has been doing for years, but particularly how you guys responded to this conference, speaks to a thirst, a desire for us to do better, those of us who work in the public space, in terms of ensuring that the public has a trust, a belief in us, that we are credible in terms of running institutions, and those of us who are practitioners, and for the academics who teach their courses with diversity and inclusion as a core value, be a reality. And so uh, this session specifically speaks to ASPA's new initiative regarding the questions. How can we be more effective in managing? How can we be more persuasive in our research regarding social equity? How can we communicate better with a whole spectrum of audiences that we have to when we do research so they can understand the findings and the meaningfulness of those findings? So it's this thing about how do we do better? And ASPA's leadership last fall, the National Council and Alan Rosenbaum felt that we need to do better. And they put together, they had a referendum that asked for the establishment of an advisory committee to establish a center titled the George Frederickson Center. And I'm not worthy to talk about George Frederickson. Perhaps Rosemary, when she comes on, she can speak about George and his decades long work in this area. But how can we establish a center that is meaningful, that speaks to the various audiences that are in the public space? They can learn from how to be better practitioners and academics as it relates to um, social equity. And so this session is for you to tell us what you think this center should be about. What kind of action should we take? What kinds of services can that center provide? And so that's going to be the bulk of the initiative today. ASPA, like NAPA, has been in this space for a long time. ASPA has this as a core value. It's prominent in our code of ethics. Just this past few months, if you read the Public Administration Review, which is our scholarly journal, there are 3 articles in the last edition about social equity. At the Jacksonville conference, we continue to hold the Hobson Award for public service. Jim Norton is not on the call, I don't think, but he founded that in honor of his wife. And Blue Woolridge, who many of you know, was the recipient. The PA Times back in the fall dedicated a whole issue just to diversity and inclusion. And we're beginning a new journal called the Journal of Social Equity in Public Administration. So these are things that ASPA is doing, but still they didn't think it was enough. They thought that a center that could constantly, I think about that term, the constant gardener, the need for constant attention to this matter is sort of a means through which we can perhaps keep this in the forefront and keep current and be innovative and the like. So that's what this is about. Before I turn it over to Rosemary, I just want to introduce the members of the committee. Um, Abraham Benavides, who's out of Texas. Jay Barry, a professor, I forget the university. We have a person on the call who will tell us when he speaks later on, Dr. Fournoy. So he'll tell us about where Abraham is nowadays. James Berry, James, who many of you know, she was the chair of this conference last year and out in North Carolina as a professor. Brandy Blissett, also a professor. David Frederickson, who's the son of George Frederickson, is part of the committee. Finzang Pal, she's out of she's out of Los Angeles, I believe, one of the cities on the West Coast. And she's a practitioner and she works in this space. Mary Guy, who is well known to all of you. James Norton, I mentioned before, who's a fighter and real ally in this space, and sponsors the Social Equity Award each year for ASPA. Susan Gooden, who all of you know, former ASPA president, and Meredith Newman, also past president of ASPA. So that makes up our committee. And now I'll turn it over to Rosemary to lead the discussion, to get your input on this exciting new venture that we're involved in.
Great. Thank you, Mike. As Mike said, I'm the Edwin Osteen Distinguished Professor at the University of Kansas, which was the position held by George Frederickson for 25 years. So I'm here to, as the University of Kansas rep, I would say, but also I, like many of you, admired George's work in this field. He was the person who wrote the book that declared social equity the third pillar of public administration. NAPA calls it the fourth pillar. It is a pillar, and also reflected in the ASPA Code of Ethics, as Mike said. So I don't want to take up time with me speaking because we want to hear from you. And we thought we would just have an open brainstorming session, hearing and listening to your ideas about what you would like to see the center do, either short-term, midterm, or long-term. It would be easiest for us if you could use your electronic hand and put your hand up, because then you rise to the top of the screen and I can call on you. But if you don't know how to do that, just wave your hand and I'll be looking for you. So with that, I'll just pause and see who would like to start us off with any ideas for the center, please. I see a hand, Dr. Edward Flournoy.
I hate to start it off, but I am. One thing, matter of fact, I'm excited about this new beginning that ASPA has put on, especially NASPA on the Frederickson. I learned about it firsthand. Matter of fact, a week ago at the monthly conference that they had last week, which I was kind of surprised it was good. From my field, I'm a practitioner, and as I was telling Michael, is that I work out of a different perspective than academia. I actually work in the field of affordable housing in terms of as an acquisition funding consultant for people who are looking to buy land and build buildings, and I look to build affordable housing for the veterans, for the homeless, and also for low income. However, I wrote an article early last year on racism and the practices of systemic redlining. And one of my pitfalls is that I look at is that everyone starts off with the 1619 project that has gotten us to DEI. And as I told Michael Massiah a while back in one of our conversations, is that DEI been out for a long time with Derek Bell, one of the fathers of critical race theory, which really is something that is a legal issue that was pondering to let everybody know, hey guys, there's something happening that needs to be done in our society. With that, my thing is that I want to make sure that we understand through public administration in terms of what's happening today with race, women, different genders, is that there's a policy that needs to be recognized and also needs to be really eliminated that has not been, and has been since the 1638 Maryland or edict or doctrine of exclusion. And that's a doctrine that was written in 1638 by the Maryland Colony Council, and it became the public policy for America today. And that's in your police shootings. They follow that doctrine. And so that everybody understand what I'm talking about, let me read what the doctrine said. It says, neither the existing Black population, their descendants, nor any other Blacks shall be permitted to enjoy the fruits of white society. The doctrine was written to ensure that Blacks would remain a subordinate, non-competitive, non-compensated workforce. Now, a lot of people may say, well, what that has to do with today? Well, what it has to do with today is that this policy is the underwritten policy of America. It's the bottom line policy that the law enforcement politicians use. Look at the Republican Party. Look at voting suppression. My thing is that in being a policy writer for banks and financial institutions back in the 80s and 90s, I used the legalities of the federal government public policies. They're the ones that govern the private sector in terms of performance and performance of ADA. They use that to put on the commercial or public or private side. But I found out when I talked to my brothers and sisters that worked in the public side, says, hey, we don't do performance on our employees. And I was wondering why you don't do that. Here I'm trying to follow those same rules and regulations that the government put out. However, the government don't follow those policies themselves. However, now today, the last, say, 15 years, they're trying to get into that. And it surprises me that now through public administration that they're talking about performance reviews, how to set things up this way. And I'm not trying to be a pessimist. I'm trying to be as optimistic as I can. But I hope that the Fredericksons not only lay out the issues of racism, women, and gender, but I hope they look at the policies, because policies is primo. Policy dictates the control and guidance of where you're going and how to rule. And I hope that, and like I said, I'm excited. I hope that I can contribute to, the Frederickson Center in some way. But I hope that we look at where we came from and what we want to do and how we want to change. And that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you. I see another hand, Seth.
Everyone, I'm Seth Meyer. Some of you know me. I do a lot of research on social equity, and actually Richard Gregory Johnson and I have a book coming out soon on a textbook on social equity. And as a junior researcher, from my perspective, it's hard to kind of get into it, like figure out how to research social equity and then how to apply it, because we're an applied field. And I think those would be some really great things, having some of that guidance. And especially because we talk about social equity in general in PA, but I find that we've kind of pigeonholed it. We look at very specific areas, but there's so much diversity within social equity. So helping students understanding the diversity of social equity, understanding if you want to study racism, how to connect with scholars of racism, where building up kind of a really strong, we have started really a strong area of racism research. But then if you want to do LGBTQ research, kind of how to build up that ability research and disability, Stephanie. So kind of all that, and then how to apply it, especially with the growth of social equity, not just as individual classes, but also how do we infuse social equity into our complete curricula, such as budgeting, human resource management, organizational assessment. So I think those would be really you've got a big job ahead of you, but I think those are some ways that we could really move the field forward and really encourage young practitioners and young scholars to be part of this.
Great, thank you. I see a third hand, W.M. Nicholson.
Hi, everybody. I'm Wendy Nicholson. I'm a rising fourth year PhD student at School of Public Affairs and Administration at Rutgers Newark. Michael, just as an aside, I got my MPA at John Jay. Heard your name a lot. We need to connect.
Yes, for sure.
I'm wondering, I'm not sure like where the center would be in terms of community engagement, but Seth makes a good point about looking more comprehensively at our scholarship, but the community doesn't understand what we do, right? We do some great in-depth research and scholarship. We understand it. We understand the jargon for the most part, but the community doesn't. So they don't know what it is that we do. So, if there's a way to perhaps put out some of our information in more plain English so that folks understand what it is we do, why we do. Because oftentimes when, things are happening in our society and decisions are made and people in the community, well, I don't understand why they did this or didn't do that, but they don't understand all the factors that go into it because they really just don't know what it is we do, particularly when it comes to issues of social equity or social justice, because it means different things to different people. The fact that we don't have definitive, concrete definitions of some of these concepts, it makes it difficult to talk about it, because if I think of equity as meaning one thing and you think of it as meaning something else, we're not actually having a meaningful conversation because we're not even on the same page. So yes, we need more scholarship, more in-depth, more comprehensive scholarship, but we also need it to be disseminated to the masses in ways that they can understand as well.
Thank you. On your last point, Wendy, let me just note that we have a subcommittee of the Center Advisory Group comprised of Mary Guy, Susan Gooden, myself, and Liz, our PhD candidate who's assisting us. And our task is to come up with definitions that will guide the center. So a definition of social equity, definition of DEI, given exactly what you just said, that it's 101 definitions, just to exaggerate. So we're actually meeting soon, and Mary Guy already has something written up, of course, because she's so competent. But that we're hoping that will be one early material thing that the center can offer, is at least the definitions, our working definitions, that will guide what the center does. Just wanted to let you know that that's already in the works. Thank you. I see a fourth hand, Marsh.
not just definitions, like they're saying, needs to also be wording that we can understand, also needs to be eye-catching. Just because it's words that people are going to be able to understand, also needs to be something that's going to catch their eye, that they're going to want to read, something that, can't just be black and white. So something that's going to say, oh, geez, that looks interesting. Maybe I want to pick that up and read it. So it needs to be also eye-catching to them. Those of us out here in the plain world, I'm not a professor of anything. I'm not an academic. I'm just an advocate for low-income housing, for affordable housing, for stable housing. That's what I am. I'm an advocate here, and that's why I'm here. And so when I'm doing my work, I see my people are not going to be picking up things unless it's eye-catching. They're not just going to pick something up because it's a piece of paper that's laying there. And probably I'm not either, but if I see something that's eye-catching, I'm going to go, oh, geez, that looks interesting. I think I'm going to pick that up. And as I start to read it and it catches my interest, or if it's something that is dear to my heart or in my realm, as you guys are saying, then yes, I'm going to continue reading it.
Thank you. Now, a hand popped up while you were talking. It said Ty Dooley, but then Ty Dooley disappeared. So I guess we've lost Ty. Other comments, suggestions, ideas. These are great ideas. We really appreciate them.
Actually, Seth, go ahead.
You go first.
Fine, thank you. I guess I just wanted to sort of add an addendum to what I initially said. In my day job, because I think that I can do a PhD part-time and also have a day job. I am the executive director of diversity, equity, inclusion at LaGuardia Community College. And so I am tasked with guiding the entire college's efforts at creating an equitable and inclusive environment. So in addition to those definitions, support for, someone like me, I consider myself a pracademic, but someone who, is doing this work and sort of guiding the college in some, right now for me, it's initial efforts. I'm supposed to lead them in developing a social equity plan, right? What might that look like? So a place where there are some concrete resources that would be beneficial to someone like me who's guiding an institution in the work that they need to do.
Thank you. I will share that right before the session started, I was saying to Mike, who has done so much work on this with the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey before he retired. I said, Mike, we need to get you out there in front of people so you could share the lessons learned from the Port Authority. How do you start? What were some initial steps that you took that proved beneficial later on? So I hear you. We hear you for sure. And there are other people who have had really wonderful experiences and have a lot of lessons learned to share. So thank you. I think Seth was next.
Yeah, I kind of want to build on, I was going to say something similar to what WN said. We are a practice-based group, but most of our diversity stuff is in academic articles. A lot of them aren't accessible. And let's be honest, a lot of practitioners aren't reading academic articles in academic journals as much as we like to pretend. I've been a practitioner for many years as well. So I think something practice-based. I know, for example, at John Jay, the Center for Women and Gender Study, I think it's called, they have a lot of great blogs and stuff. And I don't know how many people do or don't read ASPA Times. Honestly, I don't. I just get a lot of things. But seeing what people read and how to kind of maybe make it useful. One thing that we do at, so I'm the social media editor at PAR because I'm a masochist. And one of the things that we do is videos. and maybe utilizing some of that media, videos, ticking talks, all of that stuff to talk a bit about what we're learning and how that can be used by practitioners to create social equity, with the difficulty of everyone will have a different, very different understanding and definition of social equity. So.
Thank you. Dr. Edward Flournoy, I see your hand, and then I see Tommy Gutzman's hand.
Well, Tommy can go first, because I spoke already, so I'll wait for him.
Thank you.
Thank you. My question was more so geared towards rudimentary understanding of the center itself. I know you guys elaborated a bit at the beginning, but I was, I guess, thinking or wondering more about how the center, like how it's gonna be brought about, and then how it relates to, I guess, from my standpoint, students who are studying public administration.
So, Mike, let me check in here with you. I have the mandate of the center in front of me, and unless you want to highlight that, that might be helpful in answering Tommy's question. Shall I go ahead, or do you have that?
Yes, yeah, go ahead, and then I'll pitch in at the end.
Okay, so the mission of the center, as given to us by the NASPA Council, says that the center will develop tools and assessments to help individuals and organizations increase their social equity competencies, lead webinars and other events to promote social equity teaching and training, foster collaboration with practitioners from across public administration to ensure consistent and long-lasting expertise, encourage innovative DEI research that serves the public, coordinate and enhance the work of all ASPA chapters and sections within this area to ensure efforts are recognized and amplified, develop and maintain a social equity repository online to hold resources, speakers, events, and more. And finally, develop a leadership academy for public administrators to learn how to advance social equity in their lives, organizations, and professions. Now, I should say that the advisory group, so we have these subcommittees working now. The advisory group will meet as a whole for the second time later this month. And we're honestly grappling with that mission. Like, can we really start up a leadership academy, or do we recommend it and try to be a catalyst for somebody else doing it? A lot of great ideas, but that's, I believe, what the National Council had in mind at the very beginning. Mike, is that your understanding?
Spot on. And we'll be going through that prioritization. And that's why conversations that we're having now with people like you, Tommy, is important, because your voice will play into our prioritization in terms of what we focus on in the first phase. And then we see this in phases, right? You can't build the Taj Mahal in one day. What we're trying to do is, what sections of, or what phases of this center can we build out in a quick way to be of support to you and others. One thing I heard was you're advocating for students to have access to this. And that was so noted. So thank you for your comment.
Yeah, thank you. We do have a comment before we get to Edward. We have a comment from another student in the chat. Let me just highlight that because it's connected, I think, with Tommy's point. This is from Mohsen Fatemi, who is a PhD student at the University of Kansas, who writes, "I'm working on a social equity program that I created with the sponsorship of Sierra Club to engage undergraduate students with social equity research. We connected with local leaders who connect underserved communities with the resources they need. During this project, we got to feel the pain of people by hearing directly from them. Also, we've established a kind of relationship with local leaders who now know us as people who care for the services they provide and for the people in our community. Making such connections and providing such opportunities for students to engage in such activities are more influential than reading about inequities in books and articles, I guess." So echoing what many of you have said. Thank you, Mohsen. Okay, I see Edward's hand. Take it away, Edward.
Oh well, thank you very much. There's three questions that I have, and I want to thank Tommy because he kind of brought that out my mouth and my brain, and I want to thank you, Moshe, for what he had just said, and also Wendy. I grew up in St. Albans, Queens, so I understand the water, so very much. But in a sense, there's three questions. One, what are we looking for? Two, how does this affect us? And when I mean us, I don't mean the academics, because we got to understand is that public administration deals with academics and public government. But however, we're talking about communities that we have to go into, or you have to go into, that affect the growth, the integration, the rehabilitation, the equity itself of those communities. And the third question is, who are we trying to reach? And again, like I said, and Tommy brought that out, is that if we keep writing about these DEI issues, about public administration, inside public administration, why would I, like myself, as Marston Thurl, as an advocate and as a petitioner myself, be interested in how does it affect us? Because we have to bring this with all our education. We have to bring this to the field, because we're learning about the field and how to correct the wrongdoings of our policies. And we get that information from our research. We have to go either qualitative or quantitative, or mix, however you want to put it, to get this data so that we can write about and make it interesting and let them know that, hey guys, we're not just eggheads, but we're serious about putting through these policies. The Port Authority, I grew up with the Port Authority in Michael's era. I grew up in Manhattan, Queens, the Bronx, St. Albans, and I didn't get a chance to live in Staten Island, but I grew up in Yonkers. But the thing is that the Port Authority is wide, and they had a lot of issues, but and that between that and New Jersey, but they corrected that. And they did some great things. I mean, we got 1 billion miles of railroad tracks that includes, the express, all kinds, to Boston, to DC. But the thing is that I see, like I say, guys, I see it from a practitioner's view, a private view, because of where I work, and I'm in the field itself. I see the dredge of communities that are poor and rich, and how they separate, and we try to bring them together. I see that. That's today. I see that when I grew up in the Bronx, in the late 50s, early 60s, and I became a field auditor with General Motors when New York was rehabilitating itself in the early 70s. And it was hard in how they separated and gentrified and moved people out. The idea is that these three questions have to be put into the Frederickson's Center guidelines, or how can you say, or a way to which that they can be effective to the community. It shouldn't just be for education. It has to be for the community too, because that is who we're supposed to be representing. And so, when I look at this, and I hear Tommy, very clearly, of course, when I started my master's on urban housing policies at Long Island University in 1975, and I got to my thesis part, I want to write about urban housing policies and that. They told me don't, because it was a touchy program. It was, you didn't really talk about it. But I did it anyway, and I had good people to get me through. And for my dissertation, I did it on low-income household adults sustaining affordable housing in affluent neighborhoods. I was told back then, hey, that's a very touchy situation. And it shouldn't be, because we are writing about people's lives. You know, they're telling us a story of that, hey guys, we are hurting out here. Whether it's LGBT, whether it's women and unemployment, whether it's Black African Americans, any people of color. You know, we got to understand, you know, we look at these shootings like Tops up in Buffalo. They're the only grocery store in the area. And that's sad. They gotta go 5 miles or more just to shop. You know, in the early 70s, the Mount Laurel in New Jersey, they had the same problem when the Black African Americans wanted to use their property to build homes. But when they did build them, they isolated them. But shopping and jobs were 5 or 10 miles. The bus stop itself was 5 or 10 miles for them to go to work or even go to shop, and they didn't have cars. So when you ask about where we want to take this center, the questions really shouldn't come from us. It should come from the people. They're saying, hey guys, this is what we need. What are you going to, what and how you going to address our needs that affect us? Because we can write all day. You know, so that's where I am.
Thank you.
And one of the things we're looking at is developing a set of guidance and principles and standards. And so your 3 questions will be noted as we move forward.
Other insights or points or suggestions? I see Tommy's hand.
Hi, I guess on the same point of trying to continue to understand what the center might be about, and maybe just logistical things, I was wondering, is it going to be mainly an online platform? I know we're kind of in a digital age, but do you guys also think there might be a physical location? I know there's an ASPA in South Florida that I'm a part of. How do you guys think that might work out?
Great question. And that's the first question I asked when I got the phone call asking if I would work on this. Is this going to be like a physical center? And right now it's virtual, shared among many people, and as well as universities and organizations. It's up in the air. There, for example, somebody at ASPA said, well, we have an empty office at ASPA. It could physically be there. Or somebody said, well, maybe it should move from university to university. And a third person said, no, let's keep it virtual. And we could have everything on a great website. So what do you think, Tommy? What do you think would be best? Because it's still open for discussion.
Well, I guess it depends on the scope. If the scope was, I guess, national, from what it sounds like, it might be easier to have virtual. But just as a thought that came to my mind when you mentioned from university to university, that was kind of interesting, just because I guess if that was done, let's say for activities that were done at each university, that might kind of bring a wave of like awareness about the cause and the center, whether it was online or not. Like having maybe events at universities, that might be really great for both for undergraduate and graduate students.
Okay. Thank you.
Good thought.
Let's see, I see a question in the chat from Jonathan Wong. I wonder if there's a common vision for the center. I'm hearing the mission is really task focused and does not specify about the impact of the center. Am I missing something? No, I don't think you're missing anything, Jonathan. And that's a great question. So what we've done is this is now our fourth listening session. And with the advisory group reconvening on the 22nd and some work groups reporting out at that time. And I think Mike and I are, Mike, correct me, please, if I'm wrong, but I think we agree that now it's time to really hone in on sort of first steps, short-term, long-term, or short-term, medium-term, long-term aspirations for the center. And we are developing with the help of not only Liz, our PhD student from Nebraska, but an MPA student at Kansas helped us put together a slide deck that summarizes all of the suggestions that we've gotten so far. And so we'll be widely disseminating that, talking to chapters and sections once after this meeting towards the end of this month, with that goal of being very focused. So so everything's not lost in the ether world or whatever. So we can actually get something done. I don't know, Mike, do you agree with that or have anything to add, please?
That's exactly right. And what Rosemary and I, we took the 11 of us and we broke us up into 3 groups so far. Those who are going to write the definitions, as Rosemary said, another group that will focus on governance, structure, financing, dealing with some of the questions that Tommy just asked, physical, virtual. And then we have a programs committee that we captured all the comments that we received from people like you and certainly today as well, and list those program ideas and determine which ones have a short-term trajectory for completion, some that are more longer term, and then phase the work of those initiatives that we thought would be appropriate, that would be housed within this mission that we still, to Jonathan, I think it was Jonathan's point about mission, that we still need to write. And so this is a work in progress, and your input is critically important. It's been great. The 4 sessions that we have had, I guess now we're almost over 100 people that we've spoken to from all throughout the country. One thing that didn't come up today is to let you know that was mentioned several times in other sessions, the need to keep our eye on the international issues and concerns that deal with diversity and inclusion and social equity as well. So that was a big point that was mentioned. So it's a lot of thoughts out there, and it's important for us to sort of categorize them into buckets, and then try to have some home runs early on, and then subsequently in later innings score some more runs. So that's sort of our approach at this point.
Thank you.
And we're looking for volunteers. So those of you who have a passion in anything that we are talking about, somehow I could give you my number. Email is Mike GM 728 at gmail.com. So if anyone's interested, like we found Raina in that way. She volunteered and she's getting great experiences, which is supporting and enhancing her education and making some good contacts and networking. So we're here to support that as well, because at one of our sessions, to some points that have already been made today, this can't be about us folks who are in our 60s. And we need to hear from an intergenerational set of people who have their own ways of thinking about this question, these issues, their own ways of communicating that's real time and more impactful than as someone put it, the basic paper approach. I think Marsh mentioned that. So we're really looking for some fresh ideas, and then it's not we understand everyone's busy, but we can find a way to have you have an experience, contribute to this, as well as doing everything else that you do on a normal basis. So get in touch.
Thank you. And
Mark?
let me point out that Tommy, our volunteer, has put in the chat both Mike's email address and mine. Let's see, I think Marsh is next.
Back to this virtual versus a physical location. I would prefer being a tactile person. I would prefer a physical location, but being that you are a huge organization and you want to reach as many people as possible, and as Edward was saying, not just academics, not just students. You want to reach those of us that are out here in the real world. I would say go virtual. You want to reach, as Michael was saying here, you want to reach international people. Virtual is the way to go then. That way you're going to reach all of us out here in the world. You're going to reach so many more people if you go virtual. Maybe you need to have a physical place that is, your central location, that you're doing your major and most of your work, but virtual is going to give you the ability to reach so many more people in so many more countries, and in so many more time zones and stuff. It really is, as much as I don't like virtual, to be honest, because I am so tactile, it just is. It's going to give you that ability to just reach out to anybody, everybody in so many diverse cultures, which is what you want to do, which is why you're building this center. Am I correct?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. We have about 5 more minutes, and we are all ears and very interested in any other ideas or suggestions you all might have.
One of the thoughts that didn't come, go on, Marsh.
I think that's maybe her leftover hand from her previous comment.
One of the, and I'm not sure if the group, if the committee would be, the committee that we chair would be into this, but I want to get your reaction to it. One of the powerful tools that we used in doing the work that we did at the port was to have a series of listening sessions with all of our employees across the various roles and responsibilities that are in the agency. And that was a profound experience for the senior executives, who sometimes don't talk to the people they manage effectively. So they had to shut up and listen, basically, to what people had to say. And we had to provide them with training, not to inject solutions and their thoughts and all of that. Just listen and then reflect after you heard people fully. Is that approach necessary in this space that we're in, listening to the workers who work in agencies? What are their concerns, issues, thoughts, those frontline people that you talk about, not only for programmatic ideas, but just the cathartic sort of self-healing reality of having a group of people talk periodically who are of common thought and purpose, for healing even purposes. What's your thoughts on that? I'm not sure how we would mobilize people to do that more effectively. Any thinking around that strategy as part of this initiative? Obviously, through that listening, program ideas come up, solutions come up, networks come up, a lot of productive output as a result of these things. But any initial thoughts or reactions to that?
I see Edward's hand.
Yes, real quick. As one of the executives and founders of Sprint PCS back in 1996 in Fort Worth, Texas, the company did something at that time that no one has ever done before, and they exactly did what Massiah said. The executives sent out a survey on an annual basis, and it depends how you want to do it, on an annual basis to all the employees, asking them what do they think, what do they want, and what are they looking for, and how they want to be treated. And the amazing thing is that at the end of gathering all that data, they wrote a policy that was able to provide exactly what the employees needed. And Sprint PCS in 6 years, man, had the highest ratings of employment. Their revenues went from $0 to $23.5 billion, and they became number one. Now they merged with T-Mobile and all that. But the idea is that the inner workings of the employees, sitting and listening to the culture of the employees. And like Mike said, why do you want me, 60 plus years over here running, when you guys like Tommy and Jonathan and Marsh and Christopher and Motion, you guys are the future. This is your world. So I like that idea. I'm not quite sure if the survey how it would work or anything, and it could be on a monthly thing, but I suggest, number one, hey guys, if you're academics, get your people into the public administration, group, and let them read that. Second of all, if you want to do that, and once you're in there, you guys should follow up on the monthly section, monthly chapter or section leadership. They talk about all this. That's how I learned about the Frederickson Center. And they give you information on the updates. But what I'm saying is, hey guys, yes, we need to listen, not to me, but to you.
Okay, and Tommy has his hand up. Is that the next person, Rosemary?
Yes.
I do want to be cautious of time. I know we're finishing up here. My last thought was just on what you guys were saying as far as how the talks with the community. One thought that I had when someone else was talking about, I think it was Marsh, about how the center could have a place in different communities globally or even here. While not needing a center, I think ASPA does have local chapters. So I guess with the thought that you all brought earlier about the volunteers, perhaps having at least one person from each chapter that could maybe spearhead some of the on the ground activities that want to happen, that might be helpful. It may be a volunteer, maybe it's someone that's designated within each chapter. But it's just one of the thoughts, because that person could work with the local chapter and the local cities with whom maybe on in-person gatherings could happen to hear the community, as well as disseminating that information on the broader website.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just point out two things in the chat. Mike, as soon as you asked your question about listening, Marsh wrote yes. And then Wendy just added a follow-up clarifying question. Who is the target listening audience?
Well, initially it would be ASPA members, but at the local level, but it could spread out to constituents of different organizations and the like. So that's we're unclear about that right now, but certainly those practitioners and academics at the local level who don't go to their conferences and hear their voices about this whole issue of diversity, inclusion, social equity, how they're feeling, how they're being treated, et cetera, would be the initial set of for the audience.
Would you
Thank
be
you.
looking to separate students versus non-students, because there may be different perspectives, different needs, different ideas?
Not sure yet, Wendy, but it's a thought we need to. Your question is a good one, and we'll have to think through it if this idea moves forward. So thanks for that.
So it looks like we need to wrap up. Mike, did you have any final comments you wanted to make?
No, other than we're always blown away, if you will, from the richness and thoughtfulness and perspectives that you bring when we have these discussions. And so we really appreciate your time and hope that you have a wonderful conference. A lot of good sessions over the next day and a half, and really looking forward to working with all of you in the future. So thanks, Rosemary.
Yes, yeah, thank you all very much. We learned a lot. I learned a lot from each of you, and we'll be capturing your ideas in the summary of our meetings and moving forward from there. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I appreciate everyone too. You know, your thoughts are well needed, and you guys are great.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Raina, too. She's got the heavy lift of pulling this together. So
Yeah, yes,
thanks.
yep. She's great.
Enjoy.
Take care now.
Okay,
You too.
thanks.
Hey,
Bye.
everyone.
Okay, bye.
Able to unmute themselves.
Okay, perfect.
Oh my gosh.
Hi, Danielle.
Kathleen Blue. It's so good to see you.
It's good seeing you too. How are you?
It has been years. It's wonderful
know.
to see you.
Well, we'll all be together next year.
Yes,
There's
I
Blue.
hope so. It's so
I see
wonderful to
wonderful
see
people
you.
here. Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, Blue.
Hello.
I know these wonderful people.
Yes,
I
and
hear-
thanks
I
a lot
hear-
for
I heard-
everything you
I
and I
heard
have
Blue.
heard.
Hi,
College
Blue.
been doing.
Oh, there's Clea.
Hi,
Hey,
Claire.
Clea.
Hey, Richard. How you
Hello.
Oh
doing?
my God, the whole group is
This
here.
is like a
I love it.
reunion. This is just wonderful. Oh my gosh.
And it makes me